Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 144. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We bring you tips and ideas for your IT business. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Let me introduce the co-host. Yeah, co-host singular today. You'll notice that laugh is from Marvin Bee from mbsystems.net. How you doing, Marvin?
I am great. Man in the van here.
Man in the van on location. That's going to be the name of this episode, Man in the Van. Anyway, it's great to have you on the show. Let me go ahead and take care of a couple things. We've got Jetpack Live Show number 5 is coming back Monday, September 14th at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. Meet fellow techs and business owners online. Learn real ways to grow your IT business. You'll also learn tales from the trenches and learn sales and marketing tips you can actually use. You can also chat online during the show, and we usually have a Ask Me Anything at the end of the show. So we'll have a link in the show notes. Go over there and sign up. It is 100% free. All right, Mr. Marvin, what has been going on in your business as of late?
Everybody probably knows I had to deal with the possible Hurricane Erica a couple of weeks ago. So that was fun. So most of what we're doing is, catching up from that time. And the reason I say catching up is because basically during the last business day before a possible storm, we basically shut down. Not shut down the business, but shut down in the sense where we don't do any appointments. Everything is based on making sure my customers have their latest backup, make sure that they're prepared that if a, what's the word? If a warning or if a, evacuate order comes or something like that, that they're prepared to, pack up their systems, pack up their servers, in terms of shutting them down, making sure they're secure, making sure the backup is offsite, stuff like that. So that's what I spent doing that entire Friday before the weekend. And the problem with that is, the storm's not supposed to hit till Monday morning. I can't wait till the weekend to try to start dealing with customers. So that Friday was pretty much, if anybody was here during Hurricane Andrew or remembers that story, I'm the Brian Norcross for the South Florida tech community down here. So all we do is watch storm alerts and try to figure out when the warnings are coming and where the storm's going. And
gotcha. Wow.
It's fun.
No, that sounds like a lot of fun. So when you were saying that, I could just picture people, actually shutting down their servers, ripping out the cables, and have the thing underneath their arm as they're running down the street.
I've had one customer do that many, many years ago. They don't do that now, but a lot of them will take their backups. They will take their NAS or whatever, and basically we've got instructions for how to do that. They can unplug, take it with them. I have one customer that actually still sends tapes out of state. So basically we make sure we got backups done. We run an early backup so that they can run to the FedEx store, ship it up to Massachusetts, and they have their backups if they need them.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, they still say that tape is still the best medium for backing up. The problem is it comes down to user error, right? Not changing the tapes, leaving the cleaning tape in, those types of things.
Pretty much, yeah. It's constant monitoring because it's not like a USB drive or a NAS or a cloud where you can just simply get an email saying yes it did or no it didn't. Tapes you got to check. Even if it says it completed, you got to make sure you can read that data from the tape.
It's funny because I was just talking to John Dubinsky the other day. We're I'll talk about this in a second, but we were talking about checking backups. And what I was telling him was years ago, I had taken my whole CD collection and ripped everything at 320 kilobits. And I've got this, massive CD collection that's on digital. Well, shortly thereafter, in moving and whatever, all those discs are gone. So, but here's what I've had. So the different crashes I've had on a system or, the backups I use, via Carbonite or whatever, however I move those files from one computer to another or just a brand new computer build, some of those files actually became corrupted where there's static on the MP3 itself. And so, what I was telling him is I said, so how do we know? Because obviously we test our backups for our customers, right? We download some files. Hey, yep, everything, recovered. But do we really know if all the information is there in a non-corrupted format? If somebody goes back to look at a file 10 years from now, how important is that stuff? And it's just something I was thinking about the other day that I really don't have an answer for, to say, yeah, we know 100% your files are backed up with no corruption or anything from any transfer, anything we've ever done over the years.
I'm funny you should say that. I'm actually evaluating a new vendor, one that was at the ChannelCon.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of people saw. I don't know how many people talked to them. I haven't heard a lot of people mention them, but Datto, DATTO, has some products where part of their pitch is that they will test the backups for you.
Okay.
And I do have one here. I don't know if I can tear it apart yet. Actually, yes, I can. I've got one of their smaller devices. And basically what it is, this one is just simply it looks like a NAS drive, but it's a real small portable one here. Plugs into the network. And I actually have this set up to back up our server here. And I actually have it set up to where it's doing an actual image of the server.
Okay.
So it did the base image, and then basically I'm only doing it once a day, but you can do this up to, an hour a day. Every hour it takes an image. You can do it as low as 15 minutes. I don't know if that's necessary, but for us, for testing, I'm only doing it once a day.
Right.
And one of the things that it will do is it will send an email that will show you, because it's an image, it will actually boot that image and send an email. Let me see if I have one. I can post one up here. We can do a screen share.
Okay.
We can do a live interactive show today.
Hey, live interactive.
And so it will do a screenshot. Yep, here we go. Let's see if we can do the live screen capture here.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that.
There it is. Can you guys see that?
Okay.
Where it says backup verification report, and that's my server screen. So it booted up the actual image of my screen on that device, because if my server goes down, basically I can temporarily spin up an image of that and keep my business running off that device.
Right.
It's not recommended to do for a long time, but in a pinch, that's what you got. So that's what I'm working with. I've got a customer where we've got probably 3 or 4 terabytes of data that they're doing through Mozy right now. It's costing them a fortune.
Right.
This will be a little bit less, but it will add the virtual image feature for their servers, and that I think is going to be worth the benefit for them, because right now we're just backing up data. I mean, if their servers crash, I still got to rebuild them. I still got to load the OS. I still got to build everything up. With this, I just load up the image. I can do a bare metal restore, and as quickly as I can get the hardware to them, we can get the system back up and running.
Very cool. Yeah, I actually did talk to those guys. I didn't talk to them at CompTIA, but long story short, John Dubinsky and I last week went to Channel Pro in Chicago again. So 1 month later, we decided to take a day trip or day and a half trip and go to Chicago and check out the Channel Pro network. And I will tell you that both, actually, Paco LeBron was there, Andy Quiroz, Tom Wilmot, and myself and John, and we were all sitting up at the table in the front. It was actually great information from the speakers. And as a matter of fact, your friend Vince was there.
Vinny. His name is Vinny. Call him Vinny.
But you know what? The information they gave, so they would talk about products and services. It didn't matter. They weren't constrained by a company, and they were able to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about. And some of them really didn't care. They're like, hey, we don't really care. It doesn't matter what you use. Pick something, use it, and here's how you can do your business. And all the information they gave us at that, it was basically a 1-day workshop with a vendor fair and all that. It was actionable information you could take home and go to your business and go, I'm going to make some of these changes, whether it be marketing, what you offer for managed services, backups. And, so talking to, people like I talked to the Datto guys there, and it seemed like for what they had, because that little drive you just showed, that was a 1 terabyte drive.
Yep.
And so it'll do that local backup. But what they were talking about is not just backup, but they were talking about continuity.
Yes.
In other words, never having your system go down for more than a few minutes, because you have several ways you can get it back up and running. And they have other, obviously, higher end systems too, for some of your bigger corporate networks, maybe, that you can basically, it will be like a little computer in a box that will spin up as the actual server itself. And so you lose like little to no downtime whatsoever.
Yep.
It moves from one system to the other. You can pull that other server out, get you a server back in there, and then switch it back over once you're set to go. So that's really what they were trying to sell, because a lot of them were saying that they showed the tornadoes and the hurricanes and stuff, and they said, listen, this is really not what takes your data most of the time. These things are very few and far between, natural disasters, but there are real everyday things from the customer standpoint, from the business standpoint, that actually take these things down, or something gets lost or deleted or whatever.
Server crashes for whatever reason.
Right.
Somebody breaks in and messes up your stuff. I have a customer that had a fire 20 years ago, and they are still riveted by the fact that they lost everything.
Oh.
And and back then we didn't have a lot of these options, but right now we're moving them towards this type of scenario where they don't have to worry about losing everything, regardless of what the destruction is. And the thing with what we deal with here in Florida is, hurricanes, we have notification. We know ahead of time it's coming. I mean, sometimes too much. I mean, there's one out there now that we're starting to watch, but it's it's probably a week and a half away. But it's something where I can say to people, are you ready?
Right.
Most things happen. You wake up the next morning, go into your office, it's not there. Fire or something. Somebody broke in. Took everything. Those are the types of disasters that are real to people.
Yeah. And, even coming, so from my standpoint, what I'm really looking at, and I'm looking at something, I think Datto is great for your businesses and stuff like that. I think it might be a little costly for residential, but I do have some different I use Carbonite. I have some backup things in place that I'm going to use for residential. And what I'm doing is I'm putting together a managed service plan, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I'm putting together a managed service bundle, so to speak. And I'm going to have I'm only going to have 2 tiers. Basically, one's going to be a monitoring antivirus. One's going to be monitoring antivirus with backup. And it's not just going to be your normal cloud backup. It's going to be backup with a local backup that makes sense for a residential customer and is in small enough amounts of money that they can actually feasibly do it, on a yearly basis. And so what that's going to do is protect them, because I can't tell you how many customers have come and said, all my pictures for the last 10 years have been on this, computer, and can you get them back?
Right.
And I never know. I go, it's a 50-50 shot. If I can get the thing to spin up and I can actually pull the data off, I might be able to get it back. But a lot of times, there's times where I just had a drive that I just replaced that literally would not spin. There was nothing. I could see the power to it, but no spin. I mean, it was jammed up. And fortunately for this customer, they didn't care, because they had a backup, local backup, and they weren't really using, anything for storage or anything on that computer anyway. So it didn't affect them as much.
Yeah. Yeah. Our takeaway is obviously going to be have something. And Datto, I don't really think is a residential product. I don't even think it's a small business product. Most small businesses, when you look at the amount of data that they need to back up or how they want to back up servers, yeah, you can get them for, you're talking $100 a month, $200 a month to do that. Most small businesses aren't going to do that when they have the Carbonite options where they can, get it for half that or even a fraction of that for a year. So this is for my business customers, my one big law firm that I have 2 big ones, but my one big law firm that, they've got 2 SQL servers on each coast that we've got to keep up and running for them. So.
Right. And like I said, those other Datto appliances they have. Now, there's another one coming out that's called, I can't remember from the vendor fair. It was a Data box something. Anyways, it's
Yeah,
another.
they've got a whole bunch of them. They've got the Cirrus, which is the full
Yep.
imaging. They've got the virtual Alto. They actually have regular Datto NAS boxes.
Right. Where you can swap the drives. You can do RAID configuration from RAID
Yep.
0 to RAID 6. It does
Yeah.
all that stuff right in there. And you
Yeah.
can basically hot swappable,
Yep.
very, very easy to use from that standpoint. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I guess, as far as prices and stuff, if I remember correctly, that 1 terabyte box you have it was basically, if you paid the monthly fee, you didn't have to buy the actual appliance itself. They give it to you, and it's like $69 a month.
Well, what that is, it's a year's commitment. So you commit to a year, and the $69 is your cost.
Right.
And basically what they're saying is, if you're, this is something that's sold to partners and, consultants and providers like us, and then we are reselling that to our customer. So the MSRP to them is whatever, $99 a month or something like that. So, the goal is that this is what you're paying Datto, and then you're reselling this to your customers at a markup.
Right.
Obviously, the markup is up to you, or you can use their manufacturer, suggested retail. I know that when I talk to them, a lot of, the larger MSPs aren't doing a markup. They're just including it as part of their package, and however they structure that, backup services is a part of that. So they just put it in there, and it's a part of their cost.
Right. And so there's a couple ways that you can do your business, and I know different people do it differently. One way is, you build it into that cost, and there are people that don't mark anything up.
Right.
The company is going to pay for parts, but the labor is all included in there. They're just going to pay whatever it is, whatever the cost that technician can get the parts for. And, that's what some people do. And then other people, they'll do a 20-30% markup on the actual parts that they sell or services, on top of your regular monitoring.
Right. And the pricing for the Alto 2, just so that people know, the $69 is basically the amount of storage that's up in the cloud up to 150 gigabytes.
Okay.
So you're not getting the full terabyte as your cloud backup. The 1 terabyte is what's on that local device. And then your baseline image and then your incrementals will go to the cloud. And then if you go above the 150, it just bumps up to the next level, which is 250. Then it goes to 500. And then there is a full terabyte option that you can put in the cloud, which, the cost of that is $229 a month.
Okay. And the other thing that the guy from Datto said is there is it backs up the revisions for 1 year. So it has 1 year of revisions for the $69. So even though you're going to end up putting more up there than the 150, that's the part of that is going to be revisions. And he said that was totally unlimited, basically. As far as that. So now, to me, I don't know if that's a little bit overkill, but maybe for some people it makes them feel better that they have a year's worth of revisions to go back to, instead of on your business class stuff for Carbonite, it's going to be 60 days. On your residential side for Carbonite, it's 30 days. To me, for most things, I would say 60 days is probably fine, but even 30 days in most situations would work out just fine.
Yeah, you'd hope so. If you found out, you lost your stuff before that time was up. The customer that I'm speccing this out for, we're actually moving to the actual 1 year retention, which is basically your stuff is retained. I don't know if the Alto does all of that. The Alto will do up to your storage as long as it fits for a year. But if you go over that storage, it's obviously got to delete the oldest stuff to keep you under your limit.
Sure. Okay.
But with the Alto Business Class, the Cirrus products, the Alto XLs, that's where you purchase the 1 year retention, and regardless of how much you have, it's retained for a year. And then you also have a 3 year and a 7 year option. So for law firms, they looked at the 7 year option. It's a bit much for them. But for 1 year, they've had stuff where they wanted to go back and look at somebody's email. I just had it last month, August, and they wanted to go back to February to find somebody's email.
Okay.
They're currently with AppRiver, and AppRiver didn't have it.
Okay.
So So we're looking at now they're on hosted exchange, so Datto may not work for them, but Datto has an Office 365 backup, where if you've got a customer on Office 365, you can back up that through a Datto plan and have a separate backup than whatever your provider gives you.
Right. Yeah, that's the they bought that software Backupify, I believe is the one that does for Office 365.
Yep.
Yeah, the only reason I know is I've got a Rubik's Cube that they gave me, and that's one of the things it has on there for Office 365 was Backupify.
Yeah. So that was we should probably tease the viewers that we're going to do a whole show on disaster preparedness coming up in a couple of weeks here. So we'll get into a lot of this in detail then.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me it's funny you jump into that. One of the things I want to let people know is, I've started to get some emails where people are going, "Hey, where's all the shows at? I don't see any Podnutz dailies. I don't, what's going on with it?" And I think I've missed one show over the last, few weeks or whatever. We've had a busy August, a lot of things going on, family coming into town. We went out of town that one weekend, different things like that. So, there's been some things at my work that work has basically crashed, and I work on a press line, and one of the presses crashed. So they're pretty much working around the clock. So my Labor Day weekend, which is this weekend, I worked yesterday. As soon as I'm done with the podcast here, I'm going to go into work, and I'm also working Monday. So, just kind of busy. So, but one of the things that I had, I'd gotten a hold of Marvin, and thank God for him, and also Paco LeBron, who's watching the phones right now. Basically, we were able to come up with a plan where we were able to move the time up a little bit. This is just a one-time deal unless I have to work on a Sunday again. So the things that might happen is I might have to move it up to this 1 o'clock time if I'm working afternoons. If I end up working day shift on Sundays, which does sometimes happen, what we'll do is instead of just skipping the show, I'm going to try if I can get some people to commit to, come on the show on a given weekend, do it a little bit later in the evening after I get back from work. So I want to try to keep this show as consistent as possible. I do have several Podnutz dailies that are set up, so we should get those rolling back on a weekly basis. And like Marvin just said, we're going to do a disaster recovery. John Dubinsky and I are going to do, we've been looking for a RMM service, remote management and monitoring, like a GFI or Enable or whatever. And so we went and basically slept through like 4 webinars during the week before we went to Channel Pro. Now, you know what? I kind of complained about some of these companies because a lot of these companies are bigger, so they actually have a sales force that will actually walk you through the webinar, but they know nothing about the product really, other than what their paperwork says. So from that aspect, it was kind of irritating. It was like, okay, I want to know the nuts and bolts. I want to know the nitty gritty. I want to know what's going on. How can I use this? And they were just kind of going through like, I didn't know anything. And here's the things that you want to know. Here's the things that you want to give to your customer. And so, it was one of those things where I was like, okay. But we finally ran into one, and it was Ninja RMM, and they're fairly new to the market. But when I talked with this guy, number one, it was a video call using Ring Central's video service. It was phenomenal. He was away in California, and we were just sitting there, John Dubinsky and myself, talking to him and just kind of chewing the fat a little bit back and forth. Then he went to show us the product, and both John and I, because we told everybody what we wanted, and this was the only guy that could answer some of the questions that we had for him. Like, hey, will this pull the Dell serial or the Dell code for the, like Dell computers, or a serial number for the computer so you can track your stuff as you're monitoring it? And he's answering all these questions. And when we went to see the software was so simple to look at and easy to use. Literally, I could train anybody to do it sight unseen. I mean, it was that simple. And you know what? GFI, Enable, all these other systems are phenomenal systems. Continuum, LabTech, Kaseya, they're great. They've been around for a long time. But to me, the way my brain works, they're just a little bit too complicated, and they show me too much information on the front. I love to be able to dig down deep, but I don't want to see. I just want to see it. I want to see red and green. Red and green. That's all I need to see. Who's down? Who's got some issues? Whatever. So Ninja looks like it's going to be the tool of choice, up and coming. We're going to do a podcast with them. We'll have them, come out and kind of tell what they're doing. The guy who we talked to, he actually took us out to dinner at Channel Pro because we met him down there and talked a little bit more. Paco was with us, so we got an idea of what's going on with their software, and they want to bring it to these smaller businesses like us. So that's kind of some of the things we're working on right now. John, he's got it out to 40 customers right now, and or 40 endpoints, I should say. I'm just starting to put it out, and I've actually put some bundle plans together, like I was talking about earlier, on managed services for residential customers. That's going to make sense for them, and I'll bring more information of that coming up, here in the next few weeks, and I'll let everybody know how it's going. But yeah, some exciting stuff, because I think a lot of times when people look at managed services, I'm not saying everybody does this, because I know people that do, residential, but I think for a lot of people, they don't really think of the residential. Nobody's going to pay a proactive insurance to ensure that their computing experience and all their stuff is backed up on a regular basis. But I beg to differ, because, people pay for insurance all the time, and that's basically what we're offering them. And I think I've found a way price-wise that I can get this in the hands of most residential customers, which makes sense from a price standpoint for them, and also puts recurring money in my pocket on a regular basis. Again, I'm not going to get rich on doing this, but it's also proactive to the point where I think that, if a hard drive is starting to fail, or a hard drive is getting full, I'm going to see this stuff ahead of time and be able to handle it. And again, the only reason we're looking at this Ninja RMM, not only is the name cool, but I was looking at ease of use. I want to be able to get in, get out, do what I need to do, and move on with my day. I don't have time to sit there and stare at a screen for hours at a time as a single technician. I just don't. I mean, you could hire somebody to do that. That's fine, but it's just not going to work for my business. So I'm looking for something that I can actually put into my business and make work for me. So anyways, now, and I know, Marvin, you use, you're still using LogMeIn, correct? For a lot of your RMM stuff?
I have LogMeIn Central for a couple of clients, particularly one client where they have an on-site tech that also will use it to support some of their remote users. So I have that, and I basically put a tech account under that for them. I have Max Focus that I'm using, and I tried to go with Kaseya a while back, but I just didn't have the time to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So that's where I'm at. I'm kind of looking as well, not as actively looking, because my stuff right now, it works enough for what I need, but I'll probably be looking again here soon.
And I don't have the liberty to disclose this, but I will tell you the amount of endpoints that John is talking about moving over, and when he comes back on the show, he might share this, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
So this is no small undertaking whatsoever. But he, within a couple days, had 40 moved over, and he's got a lot more than that. Yeah. But so we're kind of testing it out, and it's everything that we were looking for. Now, John, like you, Marvin, is 100% business. He doesn't deal with residential customers, except maybe some of the customers that are, heads of the business or whatever. He'll do stuff like that. But he's 100% business. Now, for me, from my standpoint, I'm looking at it for the same thing, but from a residential standpoint. And so that's kind of the difference in it. But you know what? They're working identically the same. It's just two different areas of expertise as far as our markets and what we're, trying to get out there. So,
right.
All right. How are we doing on time? All right. We're at 1:30.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and go through some emails, and then we can move on from there, and we'll see what else we can bring up in this show.
All right.
All right. First email is from Brian. It says, Jeff, many thanks for reading out my last tip. Hopefully this one may be of use to you. One of my customers sent a spam email claiming to be a secure share from Dropbox. I emailed her back to alert her, and she replied confirming that she did in fact send it. Later in the day, I phoned her to confirm and was told that her Gmail account had been hacked, as others had received the same email from her. On investigation, I discovered a very poor one-word password and confirmed that her account had been accessed from South Africa earlier that day. She is based in London. We changed her password and all was well. 2 days later, I had a quick remote check, thanks to Instant House Call, Corey, on her account and saw that she had not received any new emails since the attack was discovered. It turned out that they were all in the trash. And the reason was that buried among her Gmail filters was negative VIRIGN, and it was set to delete. This, of course, deleted all emails that didn't contain that string. I removed the filter and restored the deleted emails. So far, no other attempts have been made to compromise her account. The unique aspect of this for me is that several of her contacts emailed her back to query the bogus email, and the attacker actually replied to them, confirming that they had sent it. Sneaky. All the best from sunny Scotland, and thanks for the great work on the Podnutz shows. Brian Davies. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. And I will tell you that, yes, once they have a hold of your email account, they can email from there. They can pretty much do anything they want at that point. So good catch on that. Yeah, so I think part of this, the biggest part of this tip would be definitely if you're having a problem, call your customer. Yeah, I don't know, the email would probably be the best way if you feel that somebody's been compromised. Call them and actually physically talk to them. That way you can get to the bottom of that a little bit quicker. But that's a great email and a great story, and hopefully that will help somebody out. All right. Has that ever happened to any of your customers?
Of course.
Kind of a silly question.
I mean, I had an email from a level 3 representative just last week that had sent me 2 emails right in a row, which is a sure sign of, being hacked, saying that I'm sharing my Google contacts with you.
Oh my. Okay.
So I looked at it and I was busy. So I was like, yeah, I don't need to see your contacts right now. But I went back to it. I think it was the next morning. I looked at it a little closer and I went to go do a reply. And I saw that the email address was actually 1 letter off.
Gotcha.
So I did send her a quick note and said, hey, I'm sure you're aware of this, but is this you or did you get hacked? And she responded and said, yeah, I got hacked and our IT department's on it. So
okay. Okay. So it does happen. Yeah, definitely be careful with that email out there. All right, this email is from Shane Lindberg. It says, you mentioned universal LCDs. We have found these 15-inch and 17-inch work in about 80% of LED backlit LCDs. We searched for them on Amazon and usually pay about $50 prime for the 15-inch and a few dollars more for the 17-inch. As to bad pixels, we have never seen one. For 15-inch, search for Gateway NV53 LCD. And for 17-inch, search for Acer Aspire 7551 LCD. I will have that in the show notes so you guys can refer back to that. It says the main difference we have noticed, most all of them use a 40-pin connector, while a few use a 30-pin. The side of the connector, left or right, I think right is the common one. That's interesting because I always wondered about that. And some use a thinner model. Of course, a few are higher resolution, of which obviously you would have to order something different, but the majority of 15-inch are 40-pin right connector, I think, whatever the gateway is. Standard thickness, 1366 by 768. As long as those match, it will work. That's from Shane Lindberg, a bright-eyed computer in Rochester, Minnesota. Thank you, Shane, for that email. Great to know, and I will definitely have that in the show notes so some people can take advantage of that. I think on a Podnutz Daily, I can't remember how long ago it was, a few months back, we had somebody come on and basically talk about a company where they buy, they have a standard 15 and 17-inch screens or the 15.6-inch screens that you can buy and keep on hand and replace most laptops with them. And plus, they have a whole sheet that shows exactly what laptops they'll go in. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Because, I've always been the one-off, but I'm really starting to, in my business, I'm really starting to have a handful of things on hand so I can have quicker turnarounds instead of holding on to things for a couple days while I'm waiting on a part. And that'll help the customer out too. So I know a lot of us don't want to spend money, but sometimes you got to spend a little bit to make it worth your while. And you know what? Screens, I've seen the same types of screens for the last 5 years easily. And same thing with hard drives and stuff. You're not going to see a whole lot change with that stuff. So if you keep, one or two hard drives on hand, or even if you're a small tech, or keep, one or two screens on hand, I think that's just going to help you in your business as far as turnaround. And not only that, you can probably always use them for something else. And worst case scenario is you write it off on your taxes and pay the government less.
Another reason to keep things on hand is other techs may call you saying, hey, do you have this? And if you do, those techs will come get it and use it, and they'll come back to you for other stuff. I do that with a couple of techs here, where I had a guy actually needed 2 server drives that he was using in a server array that he was hosting in his data center, that they were just 1 terabyte, SATA drives that had gone down. And I try to keep a couple of those in stock for my own customers in case the server crashes, because sometimes I may not want to wait for HP to come get it, or if it's a Dell server or something like that. But I had 2 drives for him, and he needed them that day, because the most he could do was get an overnight the next day, and he was going to have to pay out the wazoo for him. So I had him. He came and got him, and I mean, basically sets you up for for repeat referrals for other techs if they always know that, hey, this person probably has something.
That's a good idea. I've had people call me for NIC cards before. Hey, I got a tech in the area. Do you have any NIC cards on? And I didn't at the time or whatever. But yeah, it's plus, in that situation, like you said, the tech can get them. He's got them on, or if he has them on hand, replace them, and then take the old ones back and replace them. Taking his time, and then sitting those on the shelf afterwards, right, and using those for another system. So
yep.
Very cool. All right, so this last email is from Chris Webb. He said, this is really starting to pique my attention, so I will just ask, who or what is the man in a van?
That guy right there.
So this was my response to Chris. I said, a man in a van is basically one person's name for a pizza tech, but we really felt like it was more of a single tech that he was actually talking about. Is that a fair assessment, Marvin, or how did you take it?
The whole man in the van movement, it seems to have taken on this whole persona that, I don't know, maybe I wasn't quite as prepared for it as I thought we were. But, basically, the man in the van, you're right. Pizza tech is probably the closest description that at least we would have. But what I'm finding out is to, companies where they have an IT department, or to larger companies where they have, 5 or 6 techs, and then even larger companies such as these MSPs, that are trying to make their business model around managed services. They're having the same issues that we're having. And when I say us, I mean those of us that are trying to portray our business in a professional manner. We're licensed with our city, state, and governments here. We're paying our taxes. We're getting our certifications. We're getting our stuff. And what we're fighting is the person that can just simply call themselves a tech and work out of their car, work out of their van, because a lot of time that's what they do. And in Miami, that's a huge connotation, because stuff falls off of trucks all the time in Miami. So guys in vans can show up anywhere in South Florida with a van load of computers saying, hey, got a company that's trying to get rid of these real cheap, $100.
Right.
And really they're stolen property, but
sure,
that's not the real van image that we want to portray. But the image of the man in the van, solo technicians that are basically out there hustling for business, and it's a different meaning for different people. But I think that in a sense we're all fighting the same issue, because since our industry is not regulated, anybody can call themselves a tech is pretty much the way it is. So for those of us that have spent years building up our business, and learning how to do things right, wanting to take care of our customers. It's the pizza tech, the man in the van that shows up, gets a quick buck, gets out, and you may never be able to contact them again.
Well, and that's a great issue because that's why I don't know why anybody is scared of pizza techs or let me, you know what? Let me put it the way that I actually see it. I don't know why anybody is whining about pizza techs or man in the van or whatever, because the reality is what I've seen. Okay. I've seen websites go up in my own area from great technicians, but guess what? They're charging $30 for a Windows reload. And guess what? 8 months later, those technicians, their website's gone. They're no longer in business because everybody gets to a point where they go, at first it's fun to do it. And because you love it so much, you'll do it for $30 or you'll do it for $25 an hour. The reality is that will not pay the bills, and you'll eventually either raise your prices or you'll get out.
Yep.
Period. And I've seen it happen time and time again over the years. So to me, it's I don't care. Whatever. You know what? You're going to go, and guess what? Somebody's going to grab your computer. Maybe they do a great job, but like you said, 8 months or whatever, they're not going to be around. So who really cares? I don't feel the need to sit there and cry about it and whine and go, oh, what was me? Whatever. You know what? Get a better game, do what you need to do, and make it work for your business in your area. Period.
Well, I mean, I agree with that, but I do think that there is this image that we have to fight, and the image is coming from, and it's not just the pizza tech. I mean, there are techs that have been in the business as long as you and I have that are still basically, and I mean, for lack of a better phrase, they're screwing people.
Right. Oh, I agree.
I mean, and that's
you're right. You're
that
right.
is the problem. And because there is no, there's not even self-regulation. I mean, we can't self-regulate our own business. We can't call out another tech and say, get your butt out of here because you suck.
Right.
To some degree, we should be able to have something like that. But I mean, it's not just, the man in the van phrase. We'll have another show on this later.
Yeah.
As a matter of, do we even want to talk about that show in October?
Oh, in the yeah on Jetpack you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember what the title of that? I didn't name this, but Corey did.
Yeah. Let me pull up my calendar.
Something about how our single technicians ruining the market or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's hilarious.
It is hilarious, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about because, Marvin sent me the email and I basically said, yeah, we are ruining the industry, because we're going to try to do things the best way that we can and take care of people from our standpoint. And again, I don't have to have every person out there. I got 93,000 people in my local area. I know there's technicians right now in towns of a few thousand people who are making a living at doing this. So I don't want to hear it, to be honest with you. You can make it. You just have to adjust your business for whatever area you're in and make it work for you.
Yeah. The title of the show is "Are Independent Techs Spoiling the Market?"
Yes. That was it's a great show. He did not share that with me ahead of time, but no, I think it's a great title, and it's definitely something that needs to be talked about because there are. Let me put it this way: we went to CompTIA, right? And we're looking at the different technicians. We're listening to different speakers and the size of their businesses and whatnot, and all this. And I'm looking around the room, and there are more of us than there are of them. That's just the honest truth. Look at the numbers in the industry, and you'll see that that's true. But for whatever reason, some of these companies and different things don't really care to even acknowledge us as, and I talk to guys all the time, Marvin, John, you guys make good money at doing what you do as an independent tech working out of your home, to be honest with you. And you make a lot more than a lot of other people in any other industry. So I don't know. It's frustrating to me because you're a humble person who's willing to come and share and not worry about, what people think or whatever. And it just amazes me.
Yeah, I think that, that has obviously spurred me to, stay involved, become more involved wherever I can. But, I'm one of those that has been on both sides. I've started working on my own, got to a point where I hired techs, had an office, thought I was going to be the next big thing down here, and said, oh, I can't do that. So I'm back to working for myself,
Right.
by myself. So I've seen the issue. And when I say, we're fighting it from both sides, people like John and I, we're not big enough to run with the big boys, but in a sense, we're not the small independent tech scraping for business either. But there's nothing wrong with scraping for business if that's how you got to get started.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, and a lot of the techs that are either like us or in some of these larger companies, they started just like us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Every one of them.
Remember where you came from. Don't be kicking us, on the way up, because on the way down, we're going to kick you back.
Well, and that's the other thing. I look at from the standpoint, this, I think about it, but the last thing I really wanted, I would love to hire somebody and pay them a decent wage to work in my company. But the reality is, I've got a headache enough as it is just with life in general. I really don't want that headache. So I may or may not do that. But, but I know that there's people out there that do it themselves that can make a great go at it. It's a different mindset. And that's the change we got to bring to everybody out here.
Yep.
So he does follow up. And so this is kind of funny. He says, in Birmingham, we had a guy with an old ice cream truck. Instead of all stickers for ice cream, he had stickers for phone, tablet, and game console repairs. You would just walk up like you were going to buy an ice cream, and instead you got your device repaired. Now, to be honest with you, genius. I think that's great.
That is. I had a business idea like that, but we'll move on.
Other than scaring the crap out of people, no, it's a great business plan. Hey, you're mobile. I thought about that before. I thought about doing it. Here's the funny part. I thought about getting a van, retrofitting the inside with a tech bench and everything, and actually driving to people's homes. And I didn't make this up. I heard this from somebody else. But I had this vision where I would go to people's homes, and if I needed to do a repair, I would just take it out to my van, hook it up to, all the stuff, and boom.
I had that. I think we all at some point have some sort of big idea like that. Trust me, I have a folder full of ideas. I have charts that I drew up, and we actually talked about an actual bus when I was at the store, because we could roll up, because we thought about, college campuses. We could roll up and have multiple benches going, have all the parts we need there, and just spend a day doing stuff. So, that's really not a bad idea.
No, it's not. And you know what? If you can make that work. Now, me, to be honest with you, so I'm one of those weird technicians that I actually like to work out of my home. So I'm not your typical mobile tech, but, and I give a discount, so to speak. I give a flat rate discount if you bring it to me. Because quite honestly, I can have 3 or 4 machines here in my office working on that at the same time and, do other things. I'm not tied to somebody's home. But I've kind of gotten, even if I do have to go out to a business, I charge a 1 hour on site, and then, that 1 hour on site is going to, have travel and everything involved.
Right.
So I'm refiguring my prices anyways. And guess what? My prices are moving up. So just because I don't want to deal with a lot of this stuff, but quite honestly, I'm tired of customers going to me and saying, is that it? When you have that problem, here's the other thing that I learned probably from this Channel Pro weekend and from my wife more than anything is she said this just today. She goes, put whatever you're going to put out there and listen to your customers. Once you listen to your customers, you'll know, hey, does this work or not? Do I have to raise it or lower it? Do I have to adjust it? What do I need to do? But listen to your customers. And, another thing that John Dubinsky we were talking about on the way back from Chicago, he goes, charge whatever your market will bear. And you'll know when it gets to the point where your market will not bear whatever you're wanting to charge. And then you got to back down a little bit. But you know what? Different areas are going to have different people that some are going to be willing to pay top dollar for a good technician. Other people are, they want the cheapest thing. And maybe you need to find something that's going to be towards the higher end, I guess, to make yourself happy.
Yeah, I'm modifying my sliding scale because I do have, I do have some low rates for my not-for-profit customers. If I have to do somebody's home, if it's the owner of a business or whatever, I've got a different rate for them as opposed to the business, especially if it's it's the partner at the law firm.
Right.
I'm going to treat him a little special and say, look, I got all your business at work. Just give me enough to cover my time, being out here. And a lot of times they'll, slip me a little something extra,
Right.
for going home. So, and that works out great. But I do have some customers, and one in particular that I finally just gave in, who they're not really my customer. I got them as a referral from a cable company because they needed somebody with hands on the ground here in South Florida. They're actually based out of New York, and they've got some multi-million-dollar tech company supporting them. But of course, they're not going to fly down here every time something comes up. So I go out there and support them whenever they need somebody local to move a switch or check a server. And I would bill them, and I would bill them a 3-figure bill. But the assistant, even though the bill went to New York and I copied them on it, she would look at it and she's like, "You're not charging enough." And I'm like, "Well, that's pretty much which." So then I went to my highest rate, which wasn't. I thought it was a decent enough rate. Down here, it's that's pretty much it. And she still looks. She goes, "That's not enough." And so finally, I went to my absolutely, the rate that I give people when I don't want to hear from them again.
Right.
They paid it almost immediately, no
Wow.
questions. So there are some people that, yeah, they're gonna, they're gonna see. Now the reason she did it was because she knew what the other company was charging, and she's like, "Look, you're as good as they are, so you need to get compensated just the same way they are." And I've got other companies that are like, that's a 10% increase. I got to eat. I'm
Right.
like,
Exactly.
I do too.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, I know I look like I'm not starving here, but I got to eat too.
Yeah.
No, it's perception, right? Because we're talking about a service industry that a lot of people are, you look at all the throwaway devices we have. Now, I will argue that a lot of these devices we really have are not as throwaway as people think. A lot of people will say, well, I bought that laptop on a Black Friday sale for $300. It was an okay laptop. And they'll go, well, I can just replace the laptop for $300. Go ahead. Okay, what are you going to get for $300 nowadays? Some sort of Celeron processor, maybe a dual core Celeron, or I don't even know. But I'm going to tell you that, and this is coming from a standpoint of working on a beefy desktop computer. I don't find too many laptops, if any, that I would actually enjoy working on a regular basis. To me, even with SSDs and stuff, they're okay, but they're not the same thing. They really aren't.
No, they're not. I mean, I've got one here, but I don't even view it as the cost of the device anymore. It's the cost of use. What are you using it for? And if you're replacing it, what do you have to do to make it work like the last one you had? And
right.
What is that? Transferring your data.
Yep.
Making sure it performs the same. And all of those costs add up. The cost of software.
Right.
You'd be surprised how many people, complain because, yeah, I went and bought it for $300. Oh, I got to buy Office now? How much is that? It's like, yeah, you have to buy new software for new stuff. So by the time you add all that up, you're back up to $1,000 and they're,
right. Exactly.
Crying.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely something to look at. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that, they might've bought a Dell or an HP. If it was a business line, they might have gotten like whatever Office, might have been Office 2007, 2010 included in that image, which they used to do, back then. And, a lot of times you can't technically move that software from that device because it's kind of tied to it.
Right.
To a new device. So now you've got to do an Office 365, or you've got to pay an exorbitant amount for an older version of, 2010 or even 2013. You can get a standalone version, but there's a cost involved in moving all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of people, if a lot of people start really moving to the Office 365 for Office, I think that'll be the best way for people to go moving forward. It's a fixed cost. It is what it is. They move from one device to another. They can have it on up to 5 devices at a time. It's really the best bang for the buck.
It is. And it'll fall into the same type of mentality as everything else in their life. Everything, they're so used to a monthly cost, their cable bill, their phone bill, the car lease, hey, I just lease my car every month. Into 36 months, I get a new one, and I can keep it at that same kind of, fixed monthly rate. So Office 365 will be the same thing for people.
And I think coming down to a fixed rate, I mean, that, especially for businesses, that gives them a fixed cost. And I think really that's why a lot of businesses love that, because they go, okay, 1 month I might not be spending nothing. And then the next month I'm spending $2,000. Well, what happened? The accounting department can't stand when there's that big of fluctuation, when things are breaking and stuff is happening. But if they have a fixed rate where they go, here's what we're paying monthly, and we're taken care of from beginning to end, obviously outside of, a lot of what we're talking about for managed services and stuff is going to be labor. Okay. You're going to include that in your support price.
Yep.
The products, the hard drives and the, computers themselves or whatever, obviously there's going to be costs for that, but you're not doing that all the time. You might do that, once a year, maybe once every couple of years, something like that's going to break or whatever. So, that's not going to be as bad. And you're only talking on parts, depending on what it is, a few $100, so that's not a huge thing. But yeah, to go from 0 to, a couple thousand, which can, you can easily do depending on what's broken down, especially if you're charging an hourly rate. So,
oh yeah.
All right. So where are we at?
We're at Deuce, baby.
We're at Deuce. Okay. And I've got to go ahead and get ready for work here eventually. All right. Well, I think we've answered the 3 emails, and we'll keep the rest for later. So just let everybody know we will be back. We will be back at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This was a one-off that we did a little bit early. Those that are listening audio format, it'll still come out on Thursday, so that doesn't change at all. And but yeah, we'll make adjustments to make sure that we keep this show running. I would also encourage everybody to, if you have any tips or ideas or things that you want to hear about in the business or, from our show, go ahead and let us know. And, obviously we can't, there's a million ideas out there. Can't do them all, but, this is about you guys, and we want to make sure that you guys are, getting the information that you need. And if you got something you want talked about, the emails are great because it gives us, subjects to talk about. I would encourage people that haven't, go ahead and please call in. If you got a Sunday afternoon, you're just kind of hanging out, you got a question, or you want to jump in on a conversation and say, hey, here's what I do, we like that type of stuff. So I love to hear myself talk, but it gets after me after a while.
Oh, where's Chris to comment on that?
I know. And we miss. And hopefully next time, if my schedule adjusts, we'll be able to include Chris in here. But he had already had some things scheduled at this time, so he wasn't able to do that. But Marvin, I definitely appreciate you coming out on the show. And if people want to find out, what you're up to, what's the best way to do that?
Call, email, or you could go to www.maninthevan.net.
Is that seriously up and running?
Yeah, it is. Check it.
Nice. Okay, I'll check that right after the show. All right, you heard him. Maninthevan.net, man. We're going full bore with this, baby. Well, I appreciate that. And we also do Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at normally 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/live. We'd love if you guys would watch and join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room or calling in live. We have on-demand audio and video always available after the fact over at podnutz.com and my YouTube channel, Podnutz Live Show for Computer Repair Techs. You guys can find me on the Google Plus at Jeffery Halash or Twitter at TechNutPC. And if you're a computer repair tech and would like to be a guest on Podnutz Daily, where you can talk about your business, send us an email to podnutzdaily@podnutz.com. You guys can also email your questions and feedback for this show to podnutz@podnutz.com. You guys can leave a voicemail at the call-in number 1-888-697-0162. And if you do that, we will also play that on the show. You guys could do us a favor, leave us a rating and review over on iTunes. that'll let more people know about us. We can all, if you also can you help support the Podnutz Network. The next time you're shopping on Amazon, go to podnutz.com/Amazon. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. Oh.
It's horrible awesome. Because the video will never show what that means.
No, that's true. Well, hey, production value, we might bring something like that back eventually. I don't know. We'll see. I would like some updated tunes, but other than that.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can mix in some music and
there we go. Just as long as it doesn't get flagged as, I don't even know. I don't even know what the modern music is nowadays.
Well, we're not going to throw any Kid Rock on there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you kids are listening to nowadays, but anyways. Well, Marvin, I appreciate you coming out on short notice, and I think we had a great show with everybody, and definitely appreciate that. So I think I got to get ready for work, and you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Sunday.
All right.